Hey there, true crime lovers. Welcome back to another episode of Truth is Stranger. I'm Connor.
And I'm Lily, and today, oh boy, today we've got a case that will both break your heart and send shivers up your spine. We're talking about Dorothy Jane Scott, an unsolved murder from 1980.
Yeah. Dorothy Jane Scott. Okay, so, buckle in.
Yeah, let's just get into it. I mean,
This one's heavy.
it is, but it's one you'll want us to walk through. The details, the voices, the unanswered questions. Let's go back, March 28th, 1980. Anaheim, California, smallish, city-ish, Disneyland close by, but this isn't a fairy tale. Dorothy Jane Scott is 32, works part-time at a video store, part-time as a ticket taker at a nearby drive-in, and she's kind of universally liked. Pretty, friendly, reliable, charming even.
Yeah, you get that sense. Like someone you'd want as your coworker or your babysitter. Or, I don't know, neighbor.
Totally. So she's being stalked. Creepy, right?
Yeah, the classic creepy stalker stuff. So she's getting awful phone calls late at night. Heavy breathing, lilting words like, I'll kill your family if you don't come out to the car. You know, that kind of horror.
Right. She and her sister gather themselves and go to the police. They file a report. The cops can't trace the calls. This is 1980, no cell phones, no caller ID, so very hard to track.
And the calls keep coming. Dorothy's sister goes with her in case she gets forced to leave. And yet, March 28th, she leaves the house to run errands.
Errands, yeah. She stops by the drugstore at around, 9 p.m., 9:30? Picks up some things for her son's birthday gift. Her son is 4, I think.
He's a toddler, yeah. And Dorothy never comes home.
She disappears. Poof. Just gone.
Without a trace.
The next day, friends and family report her missing. And then, on March 30, someone calls her house. It's the stalker. Again. I've got her. He doesn't say dead, but the implication is there.
And later that day, they get a package, a necklace, a gold cameo locket. Inside, a pic of Dorothy and her son, and a twisted crucifix of earrings. And police go crazy. This screams he's watching, right?
Yeah, this is so personal. It's not just like, hey, I've got your wife, whatever. It's this. It's what she cares about most, her kid.
Police get the jewelry evaluated, do fingerprinting, they go back out to the drugstore, talk to the cashier. He says she left at 9:30 in her Dorchester Burgundy, or was it maroon, VW Beetle?
Classic Beetle. So adorable, actually, but not so much now.
Yeah. And she's never seen again. Until, shockingly, 5 months later.
August 1st. A body is found in a ditch near Silverado Canyon Road in the Cleveland National Forest, a good 20 miles from Anaheim. It's Dorothy. Her body, naked, battered, with chemical burns on her face and breasts.
And her hair is clipped, like someone took a piece of her hair, like a tawdry souvenir.
Yeah, they never determine exact cause, suffocation, chemical exposure, but homicide is the ruling.
Yes. So now let's linger here. This was no random crime. It's calculated, heinous, deeply personal. The stalker knew her schedule, knew about her routines, her child.
Here's what gets to me. Police bring in a graveyard shift coworker who was oddly talkative, maybe too helpful. He claims Dorothy called him the night of, but he wasn't in the station or not where he said he was. And he mentions she called just before disappearing. Could that be him?
Yeah, he couldn't back up his alibi. Friend of a friend, had a weird fascination, but they never charged him. No DNA, right?
Correct, Connor. No DNA, no solid instant evidence. So basically, her coworkers and friends, they give descriptions to police. phone calls, VW Beetle, etc., but nobody's ever charged.
The case is still open. It's still simmering.
And there are more phone calls to Dorothy's mother. They get texts and calls from the killer, occasionally for years. Sometimes things get delivered. Flowers.
Yeah, it's like he or they is toying with the family, refusing to go away.
And now, legal investigators have no new solid breakthroughs. DNA testing in later decades, nothing conclusive.
Dorothy's son grew up with this shadow, the what-ifs, the questions.
Yeah, that weighs on me. Having your mom's life end like that, unresolved.
Same. And just so we're grounded before we go deeper, quick fact check for everyone listening, because the timeline matters here. Dorothy Jane Scott vanished on May 28, 1980 in Orange County, California. She'd been getting disturbing phone calls for months. That night, she took a coworker to UCI Medical Center in Orange, stepped out to get her car, and within minutes, her Volkswagen shot past her friends and disappeared. Hours later, the car turned up burning in Santa Ana. Dorothy wasn't in it. Her remains weren't found until 1984 near Santa Ana Canyon Road. Case still unsolved.
The kind of summary that makes your stomach drop. Okay, let's go slow. Dorothy's a 32-year-old single mom. She's working as a secretary for two linked shops in Anaheim. One was often called Swinger's Psych Shop, and the other Custom John's Head Shop. Friends said she wasn't big on dating. Her world was basically work, home, and her little boy.
Which makes the stalking even creepier. The caller knew things. He'd say he watched her. He described what she wore, sometimes sweet, sometimes threatening. Like he loved her and hated her in the same breath. And Dorothy, she told family and coworkers. It wasn't a secret fear.
Then the night. One coworker suddenly fell ill. Some accounts say a spider bite or a nasty reaction. And Dorothy, being Dorothy, said, "Come on, let's go." She drove him and another coworker to UCI Medical Center. They sat around in the ER for hours. Nothing dramatic. Until it was, right?
Yeah. A little after 11 p.m., the coworker gets cleared to go. Dorothy offers to pull the car around from the parking lot so he doesn't have to walk. Her friend and the patient step outside. They see Dorothy's car approaching, then boom, headlights flare and the car guns it past them, like really fast.
They're startled, but they assume she's rushing for help or had an emergency. They wait and wait. 10 minutes, 15, no Dorothy. They check around. She's not back in the ER. Something is wrong.
They call her family. Eventually, they call police. Around 4 to 5 a.m., Dorothy's VW turns up on fire in an alley in Santa Ana. No driver, no Dorothy. The car is basically destroyed.
And then the phone calls start to Dorothy's parents, especially to her mom. A man, calm voice, sometimes taunting, sometimes claiming he loved Dorothy, sometimes, "I killed her." The calls often came when Dorothy's mom, Vera, was alone. If Dorothy's dad answered, the caller would hang up.
There was also the call to the local newspaper, a man claiming he'd killed Dorothy. He mentioned details that were not public at the time, like her scarf and the coworker's medical issue that sent them to the hospital. That's the kind of thing that tips investigators from prank to we're dealing with the offender.
Police tried phone traps. Technology in 1980 just wasn't there yet. You had to keep a caller on the line for a while to trace it. He never stayed long. And when they did stakeouts or changed routines, the calls stopped. When surveillance ended, calls resumed. Classic predator control.
Then for 4 long years, silence about where Dorothy actually was, until 1984. Construction workers uncover skeletal remains off Santa Ana Canyon Road. Nearby, a dog's remains. Dorothy had a small dog that was missing too.
Jewelry helped ID her. There was a ring and her watch, which had stopped around 12:30 a.m. The medical examiner couldn't say how she died, but the site had likely been there for years.
And after the remains are found, calls start again to her mother. It's just cruel. The man asks if Dorothy is home. It's so performative, so it's like he wanted to freeze the family in that night forever.
So who was he? Let's talk suspects and theories. Not wild internet theory crafting, just the known lanes. 1. The stalker was connected to Dorothy through the shops. A customer, delivery driver, someone who saw her daily. 2. Someone at the hospital opportunistically watched and acted. 3. Someone from her past, but friends and family kept saying she wasn't dating and had no messy ex situation.
The shop angle is strong. Dorothy worked front of house at times and in the back office. Regulars would know her car. They'd know she was kind and helpful, someone who would step outside alone to pull a car around. If he'd been calling her for months, he knew her patterns.
There was a local man some folks whisper about. Eccentric, allegedly obsessed with Dorothy. People tossed the name Mike Butler in online discussions. He was reportedly tied to a mechanical shop and had a reputation for fixation. But there's no public evidence that clears that bar from chatter to probable cause. No charges, nothing conclusive.
Right. No one's been charged. And we're not naming people as guilty. We're just mapping what's been discussed and what police looked at. The hard truth: no DNA, no clean trace from the burned car, and the body was recovered years later, degraded.
Let's sit with the car, because it's telling. You don't torch a car casually. You torch it to destroy traces, fibers, hair, blood, fingerprints. He likely drove it away from the hospital, then ditched and burned it in Santa Ana. That suggests some level of local knowledge, routes, places to hide in plain sight.
And the watch stopping around 12:30. We don't know if that's when the car burned or when she died, but it hints at a narrow window. Remember, she pulled the car around 11 o'clock p.m. We have, 90 minutes or so of window before 12:30?
Not a roaming, random serial killer vibe. More targeted. Someone who knew he needed to act fast. Hospital cameras weren't a thing like now, but they were still people. Security, lights. He must have had a plan to coax or force her to drive. Or he was already in her car. That's a thought that gives me chills.
God, there are survivor stories like that. Someone pops up from the back seat. Dorothy was caring and trusting. She could have unlocked the door without clocking a threat. Or, and I hate this, he could have held something up to the window, said her child was in danger. That would get any mom to comply.
The calls are the spine of this case. If he's the killer, and it's hard to dismiss that, then he's a sadistic caller who takes pleasure in control long after the crime. He knew details. He called the paper. He called the house. He selected who to talk to.
It's a particular offender profile. Organized enough to avoid immediate detection, confident enough to call, and local enough to track press reports. He likely had flexible hours, late nights, odd shifts. He could be a customer who noticed Dorothy's routines in car. That points back to the shops or the hospital environment that night.
Could he have followed them from work to the hospital? Sure. If he'd been calling for months, he might have watched her and waited for a moment when she'd be separated from friends. I'll pull the car around. That is the moment. One person, no crowd, a parking lot with blind corners.
Yeah, and we're talking 1980. No cell phones. If she sensed danger in those seconds, who's she gonna call? She's physically alone. I keep thinking, She tried to save a coworker a long night and a long walk, and somebody saw kindness as an opening.
We should talk about evidence that could still live somewhere. Even in old cases, you might have latent prints from the car parts that weren't totally destroyed. Preserved clothing fibers, if anything, survived.
The phone company logs numbers, exchanges, even if not full traces.
And the newspaper calls... Did they record it? Was there any audio saved?
Because if there is audio, modern tools can do voice comparison, not proving identity, but narrowing. You can estimate age range, dialect region, maybe even stress markers. If police still have those tapes, assuming they exist, that's valuable.
And then there's genetic genealogy. If any biological material from the car, the clothes, the scene, anything survived, a lab could try ultra-sensitive testing. I know, fire is brutal on DNA, but sometimes micro-traces in metal seams or protected crevices live on.
There's also the call pattern. He phones when Vera's alone, so he might have been watching the house enough to know schedules, or he was calling during hours he knew the father wasn't home. Did he work nights? Was he someone in the neighborhood? Did he pass by often enough to observe?
We've got the hospital locale, the Santa Ana burn site, and the Santa Ana Canyon Road remains site. That triangle probably matches a comfort zone. Killers often anchored to home, work, or a familiar recreational run. We can't say which, but it's local.
What hurts is Dorothy's son growing up with the myth in place of the person. He was a little boy in 1980. He had to hear his grandmother answer calls from someone saying he'd killed his mom. That's a lifetime of grief, complicated by the performance of a stranger.
And yet, there's resilience here. Year after year, people still talk about Dorothy. Her name doesn't vanish. That matters. Sometimes the thing that breaks a cold case is just time meeting attention. A tip, a memory, a name that suddenly fits.
Let's play out some theory lanes quickly, and we'll flag what we think is most plausible.
Hospital opportunist. He sees Dorothy in the ER, follows her out, pressures her, weapon threat or trick, then drives with her to Santa Ana, dumps, burns car. He then follows the case in the news and calls to relive power. Pros: opportunity, access. Cons: how did he know the details pre-public release, unless he was extremely attentive or followed them from work?
Link 2, known stalker from the shops. He's been calling for months. He follows to the hospital that night. The "I loved her" tone plus details suggest familiarity. Pros: lines up with timeline of calls, knowledge of what she wore, her life. Cons: no hard evidence tied him in.
Lane 3, hybrid. The stalker is shop-connected, but also watched the hospital that night. That's where my gut lands. Long-term fixation plus a moment of opportunity.
Same, and the burning of the car feels experienced. Either he's done vehicle torching before, or he's learned enough to know it erases a lot. This isn't the first time he thought about how to cover tracks.
Which raises the question, did he do this again? If he's an offender who thrives on power through calls, he might have escalated from stalking to homicide here, but the calls themselves are a unique signature. It's possible he only had this dynamic with Dorothy.
And if he knew Dorothy knew his voice, even if she couldn't place it, he'd stay away from people close to her. The calls stop when her dad answers. That suggests fear of being recognized by a male voice or just losing the gratification of targeting the mother.
What about motive under the emotion? Obsession? Control? Rejection he invented in his head. Entitlement. He claims love, but he acts with ownership. I take you. I decide your fate. I decide how your family remembers you. That's not love.
That's violence dressed up as romance. And it happens. We hear about it too often.
So what could move this case today?
re-examining call records and newsroom archives for any preserved audio, retesting car fragments and the watch ring for trace DNA with modern kits, rebuilding the call schedule to map likely work shifts or routes, cross-referencing men tied to the shops or UCI late shifts who later had stalking or arson histories.
And community memory. If you worked at UCI Medical Center in 1980 on nights, if you were around the Anaheim shop scene, if you remember a guy who was too interested in Dorothy, who joked about it, who called the house once as a prank, who knew about the car before news, come forward. Memory seems small until it fills the gap.
Dorothy deserves that. Her family deserves that. And if the caller is still alive, he's been walking around for decades with a secret. Secrets have a way of loosening when people age, when relationships shift, when conscience gets loud.
Conscience or a chatty ex? Talk, people.
I keep replaying the moment outside the ER, the car speeding past. If we rebuild it second by second, is she driving? Is he at the wheel? Does she flash the lights trying to signal? It's so bright her friends can't see the driver. That's not an accident. He blinds them on purpose.
To Dorothy's family, if you're listening, we're saying her name because it matters. We know you've told this story 1,000 times, and it still hurts. We're with you in hoping the right person finally decides today is the day to talk.
We're going to land this with something simple. Dorothy Jane Scott is more than a case. She's a person whose kindness got hijacked by someone else's obsession. Whoever he is, he had control for a night and tried to keep it with phone calls. The only way to take that control back is to bring the truth into the light.
And to everyone listening, thanks for sitting with a tough one. We mix in the jokes and chuckles because we're human. But cases like this, they remind us why we do the show.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please like, follow, and subscribe. We really appreciate your support. It's goodbye from both of us. Take care of you.